Hello, 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 guys. Welcome to another episode of Illustration Masterclass. Today we're going to be looking at the artist Patrick Brown. I've done some videos on him in the past, but I wanted to take a look at this piece that I just came across on his ArtStation because it's such a super complex piece, and I wanted to see what I could learn from it, what it is that I could notice from looking at a piece with this many different elements going on at the same time. And so I'm just going to kind of walk you guys through some of the things it is that I notice, and I'll try to piece together whatever it is that I feel like I can learn from this. So, as usual, whenever I look at stuff like this, I like to pull back. And in this case, pulling back from this image doesn't always really give us a whole lot of information. Even if we pull back even more, we see just how incredibly complex the piece is, which is interesting because it's still very readable, right? Like all the characters, uh, they're 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 recognizable. Not only that, but they're also acting in their own specific way. And so, what I want to do in order to just simplify this a little bit for myself, I'm going to make it black and white so that I can draw over it with my red pen here and we can see it a little bit better. And let's start looking at some leading lines and where these leading lines go. So, one leading line is this right here. We have this nice smooth curve up here to the iPhone, which also you could say follows the same curvature of this tree, very similar, which is connected to this curve, right? And then this is another curve it is that we get. We could say that this right here is also another curve, and it's leading us to this curve, which is leading us to, guess what? This curve right here, right? And this is leading us to a shape that's actually pushing us back in the opposite direction, which is interesting. Because now that we've gone halfway through the page, right? And what's interesting to notice is that he's organized it to where it seems like most, except for maybe this guy, they're all gesturing this way. And then we can see the opposite on the other side. So that's interesting. That's an interesting way to organize things. That's my first instinct from looking at it, because once we hit the midway point, or about the midway point of this illustration, our characters stop facing to the right and they begin to face to the left. So it's almost like an invisible wall that Spider-Man hits right here. And then we get closer up, and what do we see? We see characters that are swooping in this way, and this is creating a curve, the gesture of the body, and Pikachu pointing his camera outwards, right? There's another few interesting curving lines here. We have this curve going up, and we have it, say, meeting here, and this connects here and takes us up here, and then there's a natural curve that takes us to this character, to the alien. We could say that the focal points, well, we could also say these bodies here, the bodies of these two females, are pointing us towards these front characters, which are almost like a focal point to some extent, right? There's really no main focal point except for maybe these guys right here. And then you could say these are also kind of sharing the spotlight. There's lots of interesting details here. The more it is that you look at it, you really see how much storytelling goes into a piece like this. You have this leading line that's basically taking us from Chun-Li trying to take a bite out of a hot dog, and then there's a chain that cuts across here, and we see it go by Abe, and then we see the Skyrim guy. It goes behind Master Chief and Snake, goes past Donkey Kong, and we see that it's a Scorpion over here, which is pretty awesome. This is another interesting detail. We have these two characters fighting off here, and we have these two characters going the opposite direction, which is interesting. So there's some leading lines, and it seems to kind of give us some organizational principles. You know, if we were to take these shapes and we were to trace out these square shapes, they're obviously going to be pointing in the same direction. Mario is also pointing us this way, right? And we have lots of other lines that converge with one another. You know, you could say this is a converging line that hits up here, which is pretty clever, right? So there's lots of converging lines. There's lots of lines that carry through the piece. Like we have this big shape here. It goes through the whole piece, and you could say, in a sense, it creates a nice low-tone background for these characters that are in this midground to stand on, right? Because everything back here in the very back is very light-toned because it's receding into the distance. So of course, we don't need to see the detail, and it wouldn't make much sense if these were dark, right? And then as we get closer, we start to see that there is basically a frame that is being built around these characters that basically creates the midground of the image. And as we get closer to the front of it, we see that the other shapes are the front shapes are much darker. So if we were to look at it just in terms of these mid-ground shapes, it might be something like this. I'm being very vague with it. All right. So you could say these shapes back here fall into a different value category than these other shapes, right? Because we have these shapes, these darker shapes here. These all fall into a different category of values. This falls into a different category of values than anything back over here. Even if we look at, we have this front image of our character here, and we see all the detail and the armor and whatnot. We see the value changes here. But obviously we don't see that same level of gradation here, right? Because they're further away, so therefore the values are a little bit closer to one another than these values, which are much more different, much more separate from one another. This is pretty clever. Yeah, there's tons of detail in this piece. I mean, something like this must have taken him forever to do, but it's really, really cool, really fun piece. And like I said, we can see that there's a large grouping of darker shapes and shadows, basically around here in this area, right? And so we have these darker shapes that are in the foreground that are separating the darker tones from the midground. And then we have the background, which is a much lighter tone. But we can see if we zoom out and we turn off the layer, we can kind of start to see how things are grouped together, right? We can see how we have these larger shapes of black and white, and you could say it can kind of go over like that. These darker shapes here, these darker values here, and then this kind of frame that he's using the background for. Right? When we turn the color back on, I mean it's even more impressive because there's just so much color. You know, we look at the color itself, and it's incredibly well saturated. There's not a lot of darkness in his pieces. His colors are very vibrant, and because they're pretty much vibrant all the way through the painting, you know, if we sit here and we kind of poke around on the different colors, we can see the different on the color wheel down here on the bottom of my screen. You know, he's using a comic book style, and so because of that, all his colors are very, very vibrant. Even over here, they're not super dark, right? These are, but not that dark, not completely black, right? So that's what it is that I got for you guys today. I hope you guys got something from this. I feel like I got some things from it. I do these every week, and I'll be posting some more here pretty soon. So thanks guys for watching, and take care.